Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Is the video team ready? Yes, I think so. Good morning. I hope that you've all risen and shine nicely. This is a lecture about, well, as the title says, actually the title is doing the heralding, a hacker's guide to surviving in the corporate world. Peter van Eijk has been working as a researcher and as a consultant in large companies. He's been writing columns and articles about his work, and he's going to talk about how the data that is being amassed and developed and controlled within companies is actually supposed to stay there, and how we can make sure that it does that and doesn't sort of escape with data breaches and everything. The floor to Peter van Eijk. Enjoy.
So, can everybody hear me in the back? Can everybody hear me in the back? Now I hear myself in the back. Great. I hope I can live up to all the expectations that Karen has given, but let's give it a go. I want to start with a little story about my vacation. A couple of weeks ago I was in a guest house in the middle of Europe, about 1,000 kilometers away from here. And I was there with my family. We were just finishing the morning coffee. And then my wife said, they're wrapping up the breakfast, and then my wife said, well, let's go outside and finish our coffees outside. And I said, well, my cup's empty. And then my 16-year-old daughter says, well, there's still a bit of coffee left in the pot over there. And I said, well, I'd rather wait a minute because there's a fresh pot of coffee coming up real soon. And then she says to me, Daddy, you are a nerd. Now, why would you be saying something like that? The guest house is a service provider in a way, and it has a part of the service is that you can get coffee. You just pick the coffee, it's self-service. But I didn't want to have just ordinary coffee. I wanted to have fresh coffee. But there was no special, there was no regular coffee, no fresh coffee. So I had to figure out the organization of the guest house to find out how I could get the fresh coffee that I wanted. So in a way, I was hacking the organization. And the funny thing is that my daughter also understood this real quick. So I guess she's also a nerd. But she's still in denial. So what I want to go over with you today is how can we look at large corporate organizations from our perspective, from the way that we look at the world, and how can we make those worldviews more compatible. And everybody has a different view, literally, of large organizations. So what I want to do right now is show a few pictures, and let's raise hands if you think that this is a picture of this could be a way of looking at an organization. So what about this one? Yeah, if you think it's familiar, raise your hand. If you think an organization could look like this, well, same set of hands, I think. What about this? Fewer hands. So you're not in the war zone then, yeah. But what about this? Those are very few. This is a neatly organized, everybody contributing its own part. You must be living in the real world. What about this? This is corporate world. You don't think so? Not anymore, yeah, that's right, yeah. What about this? Okay, that's your favorite corporate world, I understand, yeah. I think my point of view is that this most accurately resembles a productive way of looking at the corporate world. And yesterday I was surprised a bit that Arjen Kamphuis showed the same picture by the same Dutch 17th century painter Bruegel. In conjunction with his talk, it was like hacking government and government policies. If you haven't seen it yesterday, you should go back to the slides or the presentation, because he has a number of interesting points to make that are sort of adjacent to my story. And rather than the metaphor goes deeper than just, okay, we have this tower and there's people that spoke different languages, and that's why it was never finished. Let's dive into the text that describes this. it's in one of the early books, the first book of the Bible, so even then it was already a mess. People said, well, let us build a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, right? And let us make us a name. Now, that's in our current days, that's still a valid a metaphor for what people are doing with organizations. People are bringing or are creating organizations because they have ambitions. They want to get something going. They want to get something with their name on it, or they want to be part of a thing that's larger than themselves. But you should keep in mind that it's always the people that have the ambitions with the organizations. Organizations are not natural people. So if you think the organization thinks this, the organization does that, think twice, because there's always people or a number of people behind that. And I hope to be able to go into that in a little bit more detail. So another verse says, well, they used brick for stone and slime for mortar to build this enormous, huge structure. And I'm not very proficient in pre-Christian building techniques, but what I get out of this is that they had to work with the materials that were there, and the technology that they had at that particular point in space. And the current day translation of that is that in organizations, people have to work with technology, and that technology brings its own risks. And I'll come back to those risks, because especially for you guys, that's a very important theme in organizations. And so the Lord found out that they had one language, or that they were building this huge thing, and apparently he thought of it as some sort of a threat. And he said, wow, I'm getting scary, because if these guys have a common language and a common purpose and a common goal, then nothing's going to stop them what they have thought out to do. And that, for me, that means in our current day that whenever we need to be able to do something together, we need to have a common language. We need to be able to talk to each other. And being able to talk to each other gets us into a productive mode. And the converse I will come back to later. But it's slightly more complicated than this. So what the God did, or he did, I'm not sure what the right words is here, it said, well, let's confuse this, because we don't want this. And now I'm not a